Welcome to the Apple for the Teacher podcast, the true crime podcast that features the good apples and the bad apples within the school system. My name is Anna Thomas, a teacher and your host. So join me as I present school stories that are tragic, shocking, unbelievable, and outright bizarre. Hello everyone, this is episode 10. It's great to have your company. I'd like to start with a few shout outs. Thank you to everyone following me on Instagram for all your support with the podcast. Hello to Rachel and Leah, who are the hosts of the podcast #History. History is actually my favourite subject at school to teach. So if you love history like I do, why not check out their podcast? In this episode, I'm going to deviate slightly from the normal bad apple and good apple stories. I'm going to tell 3 bad apple stories. When I was researching, I came across these stories and they all had the same theme, so I thought I would put them all together. They contain details of crimes against individuals, including children, which may not be suitable for everyone. Story 1 is called Bloodbath. Something was buried in a sand bath. What was it? Story 2, Dead and Buried. What did the excavator dig up on the school track? Story 3, 6 feet under. Vasu stole a packet of biscuits. Was his punishment justified? So let's start with story 1. This story takes us to Tokyo, Japan in 2007. Lindsay Hawker was originally from Coventry in the UK and left for Japan after she graduated from Leeds University. She taught English at a private adult language school in Chiba, Japan. She was among many foreign teachers who came to Japan each year to teach languages. She shared her accommodation with 2 other foreign female teachers. Lindsay was on her way home from work and struck up a conversation with a 28-year-old Japanese man at a train station. Once she told him she was an English teacher, he was keen for her to give him some lessons. She cycled the rest of the way home, but the man ran after her, very persistent in his desire for English lessons. When she arrived home, he asked her for a glass of water. She felt sorry for him and allowed him inside her flat, but showed him to her 2 flatmates as a precaution. Once inside, he drew a picture of her and signed it with his name, telephone number and email address. The pair agreed to meet for an English lesson at a cafe 4 days later. That night, Lindsay referred to the incident in a message to her friends and family on her Facebook page. She wrote, "Love you lots. Don't worry about that guy who chased me home. It's just crazy Japan. Miss you." The pair met at the cafe as arranged. After the English lesson, Lindsay discovered he had no money to pay her. He persuaded Lindsay to take a taxi to his nearby flat where he had money to pay her for the lessons. She told the taxi driver to wait for a short time and went into the apartment. 7 minutes later, the taxi driver left after she failed to return. Lindsay was reported missing by her school after she failed to attend her classes. Her family became concerned due to a lack of contact with their daughter. She usually kept in regular contact through email, Facebook, Skype, and the phone. An investigation into her disappearance uncovered an awful tragedy. The man had raped and strangled Lindsay to death and buried her body in a sand-filled bath. She was found bound and gagged with plastic ties and scarves. She was buried in a mixture of sand and compost soil, sprayed with a substance used to compact and decompose waste. It is believed that he planned to either bury the body in concrete or to wait until it had decomposed. He had bought the materials over the course of several visits to a local hardware store in the hours leading up to the arrival of the police. The police found a shopping trolley, which they believe he used to transport the bags of soil he used to bury Lindsay. He had moved his bathtub from the bathroom to the balcony and put Lindsay's body into it. Neighbours reported that they heard sounds of something striking metal and something being dragged. 8 officers were called to his apartment. The man politely welcomed the police into his apartment, but then he managed to flee. He attempted to leave the building barefoot and carrying a rucksack. He eluded the officers by vaulting the last few feet of the stairway to the ground, dropping the rucksack containing a large amount of money. The police were heavily criticised after the failed capture. How could 8 officers fail to apprehend the killer? Following the tragic news of Lindsay's death, her father, Bill Hawker, and Ryan Garside, her boyfriend, made an emotional journey to Tokyo to formally identify her body. She was returned home to the UK. At her funeral service, hundreds of mourners gathered to pay their respects, including the Japanese ambassador. The investigation and apprehension of the assailant was in full swing. Margaret Beckett was the Foreign Secretary of the UK, and she made an appeal to the Japanese media to devote more coverage to the murder. Officers from the UK flew to Tokyo to help liaise between the family and the Japanese investigative teams working on the case. Lindsay's parents worked tirelessly to keep their daughter's case in the media. They appealed for information, visited Japan 3 months later to renew attention, and visited again a year after her death, imploring the media to keep the case alive and made an appeal for the man to turn himself in. Lindsay's father, Bill, said, "He murdered my daughter, and he might murder again. I have a dreadful feeling of helplessness, a horrible feeling of not being able to do anything. Last time I was here, I banged on the apartment door where she was murdered and promised Lindsay I'd find her killer. I haven't found him yet, but we won't give up." Many theories circulated about what happened to him. Some thought he may have killed himself. Other reports had him joining the Yakuza underworld who protected him. Lindsay's parents were getting increasingly frustrated as time continued to pass without their daughter's killer being apprehended. They felt the Japanese authorities were unwilling to share information or keep them updated. They put pressure on the police to do more. The reward for information leading to the fugitive's capture was raised from 1 million yen to 10 million yen. They also released the drawings he had made when visiting Lindsay at her apartment, in the hope that his drawing style may be recognised by someone. The police also produced life-size cutouts of the killer. When asked how many cutouts were made, the police replied 2. Lindsay's father thought he had misheard and asked if they meant 200 or 2,000, but the police said only 2. This was yet another frustration experienced by the family. What good would only 2 cutouts make? Despite multiple reported sightings, he remained on the run for 2.5 years until, finally, he was captured while trying to board a ferry. While on the run, he travelled across the country, working on various building sites. It was discovered that he had managed to evade police through plastic surgery, including one do-it-yourself operation he performed on his own face with a pair of scissors. He added a fold to his eyelids, thinned both his lips, and increased the height of his nose. He had once seen a wanted poster of himself which showed 2 moles on his cheek. He immediately proceeded to slice the moles off his face. The photo of him before and after the plastic surgery is really amazing. It's no wonder he wasn't found for so long. It really looks like 2 different people. It was while working at a building site which proved his undoing. Staff became suspicious of him and handed police a photograph of his new appearance, which was released to the Japanese media. He was arrested shortly after. During his time in custody, while awaiting the trial, he apologised to Lindsay's family and wrote a book of the events, saying, quote, "The book is a gesture of contrition for the crime I committed." The book told his side of the story, and he offered Lindsay's family all the royalties from the book, but they declined. A film was also released based on his book, covering the 2.5 years he spent on the run before finally being caught. The book became a national bestseller in Japan. Upon entering the court at his trial, he knelt down in front of Lindsay's family as if providing an apology. He did this each time he entered the court, bowing deeply towards Lindsay's parents, but they always made sure they were looking in the other direction. He insisted he had no intention of killing Lindsay, claiming that he had put his hands to her throat to stifle her cries, but accidentally suffocated her. He also claimed he had tried to resuscitate her and that while on the run, he had embarked on a pilgrimage tour of Japanese temples, wishing Lindsay could come back to life. He testified he had an encounter with Lindsay a few days before attacking her, telling the court, "Because she resembled a Caucasian woman with whom I had been acquainted, I went after her and talked to her. I followed her to her residence because I wanted to take private English lessons from her. I was thinking that I wanted to establish an intimate relationship with her. I gave in to the temptation." According to his account, after raping Lindsay, she pleaded with him saying, quote, "I will not report this to the police. You can keep my ID card from my wallet." However, he decided he couldn't let her go because her eyes were bruised from the attack and he was sure her roommate or others would report it to the police. Lindsay's mother addressed court as a witness and condemned the book he published. She revealed she could not take a bath for 2 years after her daughter's death and urged the maximum death penalty. "I don't know how anyone can begin to imagine how shocking it is to receive the news that your child has died. When we heard that Lindsay had been murdered, we were totally devastated. We could not sleep or eat, and I was terrified of letting my 2 other daughters out of my sight. I blamed myself for letting her come here. We have a balcony and I cannot go onto it anymore. If I get into an elevator and someone strange steps in, I have to step out. My 2 daughters, Lisa and Louise, have lost their best friend, and I cannot find the words to describe fully how this has affected our family." After his arrest, he had sent a letter of apology to the family. Lindsay's mother's response was as follows. "We had been to Japan on many occasions to ask for him to give himself up. We asked for his family to also appeal to him to give himself up, but it never happened. When he was arrested, we heard nothing. And then, out of the blue, a letter of apology. We felt that he is not sorry for what he has done, but sorry that he was caught." He admitted charges of rape, causing injury resulting in death, and disposing of a body, which carry a sentence of up to 20 years in prison. But he denied he murdered her, which can be punished by hanging in Japan. Lindsay's mother was asked what she would consider to be an appropriate punishment. Her reply was, "I do not think he should be shown any mercy. He did not show my daughter any mercy, and I think he should receive the maximum death penalty." In Japan, it's very rare for someone to be sentenced to death for only killing one person. The verdict? He was sentenced to life in prison. Here is Lindsay's father's statement after the verdict. We have been waiting for this day for a long time. It has been 4.5 long years. Our only wish has always been to get justice for Lindsay, and today, as a family, our wish has been fulfilled, and we are very pleased with the outcome. So that's the end of the story. As usual, I refuse to name the killer in this story in an effort to prevent him from receiving any more notoriety. All the images and photos related to the stories so far in this podcast have been placed on Facebook and on Instagram. However, these are only of the victims, not the perpetrators. I have not shown any photos of perpetrators so far in my podcast. But for the first time, I'm going to depart from this policy by providing a photo of Lindsay's killer. It shows the before and after photos following the cosmetic surgery. The photos are really incredible. You would never think that it was the same person. So have a look yourself at the Apple for the Teacher Facebook page and on Instagram. What got me about this story was that he was allowed to write a book in jail, which went to the top of the bestseller list. The book reportedly did not mention his motives for the crime, but only detailed his life on the run, his constant fear of being caught, and his obsession with changing his appearance. It sounds to me like total self-indulgence. This is just so wrong. I cannot fathom that these wicked people can benefit financially from their horrific crimes. I really believe that there should be a law against this. Yes, free speech should be a right for everyone, but in my opinion, criminals should lose this right. What about the victims? They are forever silenced. I have no doubt his book was full of lies and embellishments of the real truth about what happened. I have no interest to read a criminal's account of their crime. So let's have a break now before the next story. This next story took place in China. 16 years ago, a school was having a new sports facility constructed. A man by the name of Deng Xiping was in charge of taking care of the facilities and maintenance at the school, and also overseed the new construction. The track and field were being built by the principal's nephew. Deng had serious concerns about the build quality and felt that they were cutting corners. He refused to sign off on the work and reported it to the county government. Deng then mysteriously disappeared. Now we fast forward 16 years to April this year, 2019. A former student from the school where Deng worked was involved in a criminal gang. The leader of the gang was the same man who was the building contractor at the time of Deng's disappearance. The former student heard the man confess to Deng's murder, saying he was buried underground and that the police would never find him. This confession was taken to the police, and shortly thereafter, Deng's remains were indeed discovered buried beneath the running track. The contractor confessed to killing and burying Deng for threatening to expose him. He was the nephew of the school's principal. 6 men, also believed to be builders on the project, were arrested along with him. The principal admitted to the illegal construction of the sports facility, but denied knowing anything about Deng's death. Deng's son, who was only 15 at the time, had spent the last 16 years campaigning for his father's disappearance to be properly investigated. He said that his father filed a complaint alleging that the man who has since confessed to the killing had embezzled funds and skimped on building materials. His father had accused the school's principal of corruption after the budget for the project rose inexplicably from 800,000 yuan to 1.4 million yuan. The nephew had been awarded the construction of the project without a bidding process. We had long suspected that his disappearance was linked to my father being a whistleblower. My father was persecuted, and I am in pain because, as his son, I can't clear his name. I need justice. We have waited 16 years. The authorities must tell me what happened back then. I want nothing but the truth. Deng's family had long believed that the principal and the nephew had close ties to local government officials, and therefore Deng's disappearance was not investigated. The nephew had never been questioned by the authorities. The principal's wife, brother-in-law, and cousin all had leadership positions in the local county government. Deng's son said, "For the past 16 years, he had been laying under the icy playground and no one knew, or if anyone did know, no one was able to redress the injustice he had endured." Deng's daughter said the following, "I couldn't stop crying when I saw the excavator unearth my father's body and the thought of more than 300 kilograms on rocks that were on top of him." As Deng's body was only discovered in June this year, I will provide an update on the investigation when it becomes available. Let's have another break now before the next story. This third story only took place in March this year, 2019, in India. The school at the centre of this story is called the Children Home Academy Boarding School. It provides free education to poor and orphaned children. Some students from the school had gone on an outing. One of the boys, 12-year-old Vasu, Yadav, had stolen a packet of biscuits from a shop. The shopkeeper reported the matter to school authorities. This prompted the school to cancel the trip, and the students promptly returned back to school. The other students were infuriated the trip was cancelled, blaming Vasu. He was beaten up by 2 grade 12 students with cricket bats and wickets, and then they poured cold water on him. After the assault, Vasu remained in the classroom until he was found by the hostel warden later in the evening. He was taken to the hospital, but sadly, Vasu did not survive. What followed defies belief. The staff members tried to hide what happened to him and did not even report it to the police. They also did not inform the boy's parents. Instead, they buried Vasu in the school grounds in an effort to cover up his death. There had not even been a post-mortem done by the hospital. It was the police who exhumed the body and conducted the post-mortem. The school administration tried to make it a food poisoning case. After the post-mortem, things became clear that he was beaten up. They arrested 2 boys, the warden, the sports teacher, and the school manager. After the interrogation, the bat and the ashes of the burnt wicket, which were used to beat the boy, were found. The accused hid the bat in the sports teacher's cupboard and burnt the wicket. A case has been registered against the hostel manager, the warden, and the sports teacher for causing the disappearance of evidence, while the 2 boys involved in the crime have been charged with murder. Since this case came to light, the Child Development Commission, which have been investigating the incident, has found some other alarming details of incidents at the same school. A girl was allegedly raped, but nothing came of the matter. Another boy also disappeared while on a school trip and was never found. Therefore, serious questions have been raised about the management of the school. In an incredible twist, those accused of Vasu's murder now claim they did not kill him, and instead have accused the school and the police of forcing them to admit to the crime. They claim the police beat them up and forced them to confess to the crime on video. This only came to light a month ago, so I'm going to certainly be keeping tabs on this case for any further updates, which I will let you know about. So that's almost the end of this episode. I'd now like to give you a preview of episode 11. It's called Boot Camp and Runaway Bus. Here's a summary. Alex was having a great time on school camp, or was he? The out-of-control bus was heading straight for the students. What happened? To end this episode, I will leave you with this quote. A good teacher is like a candle. It consumes itself to light the way for others. Bye for now, and remember to be a good apple.